Hello everyone, we're starting our new book in our new unit, and our book is called Shapes and Angles, and the next unit that we're going to be looking at or block is angle relationships. So just remember, angles are all around us. Remember, they're used in construction, graphic design, art, machining and manufacturing, all different types of fields. And so what we're going to be doing today is doing a little brainstorm on angle types, which you might already know. And then later on in the lesson, we're going to be taking a look at some problem-solving strategies that use our angle relationships from today. So what I'd like you to do is grab your notes, grab a piece of paper. If you don't have your notes and a writing utensil, let's do our brainstorm, okay? So I'm going to show you today the angles that we're going to be looking at. So we have 4 different angles that we're going to be looking at today: acute, right, obtuse, and straight. What I'd like you to do is take just a moment to write those down. When you get done writing those down, I'd like you to pause the video. And then what I'd like you to do is write down anything you know about those angle names. Remember, think back to elementary, think back to any types of problems that you have done before with angles, and jot down anything that you can. And then I would like you to unpause the video. So go ahead and pause when you're ready. All right, so hopefully you've unpaused, then you can hear me. And what we're going to do now is summarize what you know. Unfortunately, I can't hear what you wrote down, but I'm going to go ahead and jot down and show you a couple of things that are relating to each type of angle. Okay, so here we go. So the first one is acute. I always like this one because I always think about this angle as a cute little angle. A little baby angle, a cute little one. So this one, as you can see, I wrote the angle COW. Angles, just so you know, are formed by 2 rays that intersect at what we call a vertex. So here is one ray, and then here is another one, and they connect. Just remember, an angle is like a hinge. It's how it opens, and when the angle opens like this, it increases in size. They measure an angle based on its degree. So we measure our weight with pounds. We measure lengths of objects, maybe with inches. Remember, we measure angles with units called degrees, okay? So if I look at angle COW, the measurement, that little M out front means measurement. That little symbol right here is angle. I know it looks like a less than symbol, but it is an angle symbol, COW. You're going to notice that when I wrote this angle, that the O, which is where that hinge is, where the 2 rays meet, that's called a vertex, has to be in the middle, and the degree was 65 degrees. So hopefully on your paper you wrote down that it has to be an angle measurement that is obviously greater than 0 degrees, but then it has to be less than 90, a cute little angle. All right, let's take a look at right. So the right angle that I have here is angle SUN. Hopefully you've enjoyed some sun over the last few days. The measurement of angle SUN has to be 90 degrees. So a right angle always has to be 90, and it is usually marked either with the 90-degree mark or with this little square right at the vertex, okay? So that again is a 90-degree angle. Let's take a look at obtuse. So here's our obtuse angle. And our obtuse angle, hopefully you had a chance to write this down. This is a measurement of angle FUN, is 120 degrees. So this is in that category of obtuse. It means that the angle measurement has to be greater than 90 degrees, but it has to be less than 180. All right, let's talk straight angle. Straight angles are just like this. It's a straight line. Now, if I think about a straight angle, people are wondering maybe like, why wouldn't I just call it a straight line? But this angle does measure 180 degrees exactly, that measurement of CAT. Just remember too that as I look at this, that measurement has to make, again, that straight line 180 degrees. All right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to jot down a few angles. Excuse me. So if you didn't get a chance to write down any of that information, feel free and pause. Just go ahead and unpause it whenever you're ready, and let's go ahead and test ourselves on what the angles are. Now, we usually go by what they look like, but I do know that sometimes it's a little bit more practical and more precise if we do look for markings or angle measurements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hold up a picture, and I want you in your mind to think what type of angle this is. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. All right, hopefully you thought it was right. It is a right angle. All right, you can wear a shirt like this and say, I'm always right, haha. All right, here's the next one. And when you do set this one up, I'm going to go ahead and put a little mark inside here. All right, so let's take a look at this one. All right, hopefully you thought this one was acute. It is 15 degrees, so that does fulfill the criteria for an acute angle. It's definitely less than 90, but greater than 0. All right, let's take a look at another one. Okay, let's take a look at this. Hopefully you said this is a straight angle. Just remember, our straight angles are always equal to 180 degrees. And let's take a look at this last one. And just be careful, some angles don't always sit nice on a piece of paper. Sometimes they might look a little bit different. They might be turned or rotated. So just really look for those markings. All right, let's take a look at this last one. All right, hopefully you said it was obtuse. Just remember that the angle has to be less than 180 degrees, but greater than 90. All right, so hopefully you had just a second to review those names. Sometimes we might know the names, but we forget the criteria, so hopefully you had a chance to write that down. Let's take a look at the last little bit of vocabulary, and today we're going to do this one together. All right. So the last two things that we're going to be writing down today are two vocabulary words that maybe you've heard of before. The two vocabulary words are congruent and adjacent. Let's go ahead and start with congruent. Congruent means that two things are the same. And when I think about the same, some people like to use the word equal. Okay, now we're going to be taking a look at congruent angles. So here is our first angle, angle DOG. So remember, when we read our angle measurements, we usually start out on the ray, and then we go down to the vertex and then out to the other ray. So DOG, which is right here. Here's our congruent symbol. It's an equal sign with like a little squiggle on top, or a wave. So that's a congruent symbol. And it should be the same as the measurement of RAT. Now, if I look at these two, I can see that they're congruent, not just because I think they look the same, but because they are marked two different ways. So I want you to be real clear that sometimes, even though they might look the same, they may not be. So we want to always go for precision. You want to look for how the angles are marked based on their degree. So I know they're both equal to 55 degrees. So if one is equal to 55, then I know then the other one is equal to 55, and so therefore they're the same or congruent. But you're going to also notice something else right here at the vertex. It looks like a little curve with two little slashes on it. So what this tells me is that this angle is congruent to this one. That's another way to tell. Okay? So again, these two angles, angle DOG and angle RAT, dog and rat, are congruent because they're the same angle degree. Their angles are open and measuring the same degree. All right, so let's take a look at the second word, adjacent. Oh, we have been adjacent to our family during this COVID-19 crisis and pandemic. So it says adjacent. That means that we have been next to each other. Okay, so if I think about adjacent, that means that they are angles right next to each other. Now, if we think about right next to each other, let's take a look at our example. So I have two angles that are right next to each other. That means that the two angles have to share a side. So let's put that in too, just so we know. Share a side. We call that side, we call it a ray. Just in case if you're really trying to be real precise, that's ray. So let's go ahead and talk about what two angles are next to each other. So I said angle BAT, which is this one, BAT, is adjacent to TAG. So I'm going to go ahead and color this in with another color. Do you notice how, as I color in this one over the top, if I notice angle BAT and TAG, do you notice how they share a ray? They share the ray AT, okay? So if I think about this, there's also one other relationship. If you have an angle right next to each other, really, I don't know if you can see this or not, but there's actually 3 angles here. There is angle BAT, there's angle TAG, so again, the angle that I marked in yellow and the one that I marked in orange, but they actually combine together to make a larger angle. So that means I can take both smaller angles and I can add them together, meaning add their degrees together, how I measure, and they can form a larger angle. So that is going to be something that we're going to be using later on as well. So do you notice here how I put that M here? The measurement of BAT, so I'm going to give it a measurement, okay? Let's say this measurement happened to be, let's say 60 degrees, plus the measurement of TAG. Let's say this angle measurement was 40 degrees, is equal to the measurement of BAG, this big angle, BAG. So if I did add 60 and 40 together, if I did BAT, which is 60 degrees, and you always want to make sure you put your degrees, if I add that to the measurement of angle TAG, which happens to be 40 degrees, it would give me the measurement of BAG. Even though it's not specifically given to me, I can actually add those two together. It's an angle sum. So I'm going to put BAG here. And sure enough, if I add 60 and 40 together, that the angle BAG, that larger angle, would be equal to 100 degrees. Okay, so let's go ahead and recap again. Congruent angles, remember, mean that they are exactly the same degree measurement. If it's not marked with the actual degree, make sure it is marked with a symbol that looks like this. Sometimes angles could have something like this, which means it might just have one slash, because you might have, let's say, these two angles and these two angles, and you need to know which two angles are congruent to each other. You can tell that because these two have one slash mark. We know they are paired up, meaning that they are the same, versus these two with the 2 slashes, these two are the same. And remember, with adjacent angles are right next to each other, like we are with our family right now, right next to each other. We are sharing a side. So these two angles, remember, have to share that same side or that ray. And therefore, if they do share a side, then you could combine those two together to make a larger angle. I hope this helped. A little review of congruent and adjacent, but also our angle relationships, acute, right, obtuse, and straight. I can't wait to solve problems with you later on this week. We're going to be looking at some equations and how can we actually solve some problems using these angle relationships. Just remember to jot down the relationships, jot down anything that we talked about today so you have them right on a piece of paper and you can use those to support your work this week. All right, thanks.